Captain Lee Tiemann stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, watching the greatest leaders of known space abandon an entire race to die. The massive dome stretched above him, filled with floating platforms or different alien species, sat in their environmental bubbles. Some breathed methane, others needed intense heat, and a few existed as pure energy. But today, they all shared one thing in common. They were all cowards. The Velani ambassador floated in the center of the chamber. Her name was Luminara, and she was beautiful in a way that made Tiemann's chest tight with sadness. The Velani looked like living crystals that had learned to move and think. Light passed through their bodies, creating rainbow patterns that shifted with their emotions. Right now, Luminara's light was dim and flickering, the color of fear and desperation. "Please," Luminara said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "My people have only 3 days before our world falls. The Scarith Horde has surrounded Viridian. They are burning our crystal gardens and harvesting our children for their machines." Tiemann had seen the reports. The Scarith were nightmares made. Real, part machine, part flesh, all hunger. They moved from world to world like a plague of metal locusts, consuming everything living and adding it to their endless army. No one had ever stopped them. No one had even tried. The Zephyrian representative spoke first. The Zephyrians were beings of pure energy who lived in the upper atmosphere of gas giants. They appeared as shifting clouds of light with voices like distant thunder. "The Zephyrian Empire regrets this situation," the cloud said, its colors cold and blue. "However, our resources are needed elsewhere. We cannot risk our people for a lost cause." Luminara's light flickered brighter for a moment. Anger, Tiemann realized. Even the peaceful Velani could feel rage. "Lost cause?" She whispered. "We are talking about children, families, an entire civilization that has never hurt anyone." The Terracon delegate spoke next. The Terracons were giants made of living stone and metal, each one the size of a small building. When they moved, the floor shook. "The Terracon Collective has analyzed the tactical situation," the giant rumbled, its voice like grinding boulders. "Probability of success against the Scarith Horde is less than 2%. We do not waste lives on impossible battles." More voices joined in. The Aquari Federation, with their fish-like bodies and telepathic abilities, declared through their translation devices that strategic non-involvement was their official position. The insectoid swarms buzzed their regrets, but cited insufficient tactical advantage. One by one, every major power in the galaxy found an excuse to let an entire species die. Tiemann felt sick. He had joined the diplomatic corps because he believed in bringing peace to the galaxy. He had studied alien languages and customs, learned to see beauty in forms of life that most humans found strange or frightening. The Velani had been among his favorites to work with. They were healers and artists, philosophers and gardeners. Their crystal cities sang with harmonic frequencies that could cure diseases and mend broken bones. They had saved thousands of human lives during the Proxima Plague outbreak 5 years ago, asking for nothing in return except friendship. Now they were going to die, and no one cared. Lieutenant Park Jisoo stood beside him, her face pale as she listened to the radio chatter from their ship. She was Tiemann's communications officer, young and eager, still believing that the universe was mostly good. Today was destroying that belief piece by piece. "Sir," she whispered, "Command is sending new orders." Tiemann took the communication device from her hands. The message was short and clear. Maintain diplomatic neutrality. The Terran Republic cannot risk war with the Scarith Horde. Do not commit to any military action. Return to Earth immediately after council session ends. He stared at the words, feeling something cold and hard settle in his stomach. Humanity had fought so hard to join the Galactic Council. They were the newest members, barely 50 years since first contact. Earth's population was only 8 billion, tiny compared to the trillion-member civilizations that dominated galactic politics. Humanity's technology was primitive by galactic standards. Their military was laughably small, but they were here. They had a voice. They could speak for those who had no one else to speak for them. Luminara was crying now. Velani tears looked like liquid starlight, falling from her crystal face and dissolving into sparkles of light before they hit the floor. "Is there no one?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Is there no one in all the galaxy who will stand with us?" The chamber was silent, except for the hum of environmental systems and the distant rumble of Nexus Prime's artificial gravity generators. Teeman looked around at the assembled representatives. Dozens of species, hundreds of worlds, trillions of beings, all of them looking away from Luminara's tears. Something inside Teeman snapped. He stepped forward into the speaking circle. Protocol demanded that he request permission to address the council, but protocol could go to hell. "I'll stand with you," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic system. Every eye, sensor, and attention device in the room turned toward him. Luminara's light brightened with hope, while the other delegates shifted uncomfortably. A few began talking in hushed tones, probably wondering who this insignificant human thought he was. "Captain Lee Taman of the Terran Republic," he announced formally. "I cannot speak for my government, but I can speak for myself and for the crew of the Soul's Pride. We will not abandon the Velani people." Park Jisu stared at him with wide eyes. She knew what this meant. Disobeying direct orders from Earth Command would end both their careers and probably land them in prison. Starting an unauthorized war could mean execution for treason. But Taman was looking at Luminara's face, at the way her inner light was growing brighter with each word he spoke. The Velani had saved his cousin's life during the plague. They had shared their art and music with humanity, teaching humans to see beauty in new ways. They had asked for nothing and given everything. The Scarith Horde thinks it can consume whoever it wants, Teeman continued, his voice getting stronger. Every race here thinks it's too dangerous to fight them. Maybe they're right. Maybe we'll all die trying. But some things are worth dying for. He turned to face the assembled delegates, these powerful beings who commanded star fleets and controlled the fate of worlds. "You want to know the difference between humans and the rest of you? We're too stupid to know when we're beaten. And we're too stubborn to abandon our friends." The Zephyrian representative pulsed with annoyed colors. "Captain Teeman, you speak of matters beyond your understanding. The Scarith Horde has never been defeated. They have consumed 47 civilizations. Your entire species would be nothing, more than a snack to them." Teeman smiled, and it was not a nice smile. "Then we'll make sure to give them indigestion." He walked over to Luminara and placed his hand on her crystal arm. Her surface was warm and smooth, like polished glass heated by sunlight. "Crystal Elder," he said formally, using her proper title. "The Terran Republic may not stand with you officially, but Captain Lee Teeman and the crew of the Soul's Pride will fight beside your people until the end." Luminara's tears became tears of joy, bright silver light that made rainbow patterns in the air. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for remembering that we are more than just numbers in a tactical analysis." As the council session dissolved into chaos, with delegates arguing and shouting in dozens of languages, Teeman was already planning. He had a ship, a crew of 200 brave souls, and the fury of someone who had seen too much injustice for one day. It wasn't much of an army. But it would have to be enough. Park Jisu touched his arm. "Sir, what are we really going to do? We have one ship against 50,000 Scarith vessels." Teeman looked at her, then at Luminara, then at the arguing delegates, who are already forgetting that an entire civilization was about to die. We're going to do what humans do best, Lieutenant. We're going to prove everyone wrong. He activated his communicator and sent a message that would change the course of galactic history. Earth Command, this is Captain Lee Timin. I need to speak with Admiral Kim Woojin immediately. We have a problem that requires a human solution. As they left the chamber, Luminara's song followed them, a melody of hope rising from the depths of despair. It was a song that would soon echo across the galaxy, carried by human voices into the darkness where the Scarith Horde waited. Admiral Kim Woojin was having coffee in his office when the message that would change everything arrived. The coffee was real Earth-grown, a luxury he allowed himself once a week. Outside his window, he could see the orbital shipyards where humanity's small but growing fleet floated like metal birds against the stars. It was a peaceful morning on Luna Base, the kind that made him forget that the galaxy was full of things that wanted to kill humans. Then his communication console erupted with priority alerts. Admiral, his aide called from the outer office. Captain Lee Timin from the diplomatic mission is requesting immediate contact. He says it's about the Galactic Council session. Woojin sighed and put down his coffee. Timin was a good man, but he had a tendency to get emotionally involved. In alien politics, the Velani situation was tragic, but Earth couldn't afford to make enemies of the Scarith Horde. Humanity was still too weak, too isolated, too new to galactic society. When Timin's face appeared on the screen, Woojin could see immediately that something had changed. The captain's usual diplomatic calm was gone, replaced by a fierce determination that made Woojin's stomach clench with worry. Admiral, Timin said without preamble, I need permission to take the Soul's Pride to Viridian. The Velani are going to be extinct in 3 days if someone doesn't help them. Captain, you know our orders, Woojin replied carefully. We cannot risk conflict with the Scarith Horde. Earth's survival depends on maintaining neutrality. Sir, with respect, neutrality is just another word for cowardice when good people are dying. Woojin felt his own temper flare. Watch your tone, Captain. I've seen the tactical reports. The Scarith Horde has 50,000 ships at Viridian. We have 300 ships in our entire fleet. It would be suicide, maybe, Timin said, but it would be the right kind of suicide. The Velani saved 200,000 human lives during the Proxima Plague. They've shared their healing technology with us freely. They've never asked for anything in return. Now they're asking for help, and we're going to say no because it's dangerous? The connection ended, leaving Woojin staring at a blank screen. He knew Timin was right, and that made it worse. The Velani had been good friends to humanity. But friendship was a luxury that weak civilizations couldn't afford. Within an hour, President Choi Minji was calling an emergency session of the Defense Council. Woojin found himself in the Situation Room deep beneath Luna Base, surrounded by the most powerful people in human space. General Yoon Seo-jin commanded the ground forces. Director Kang Hai-wan ran intelligence operations. Dr. Han Soo-yang supervised xenobiological research. They were all good people, but they were also pragmatists who understood that one wrong move could mean human extinction. The situation is simple, President Choi began, her voice tired. She had been in office for 6 years, ever since humanity joined the Galactic Council, and the stress was showing in the gray streaks in her hair. Captain Timin has requested permission to intervene in the Velani crisis. Intelligence reports indicate that the Scarith Horde has overwhelming force at Viridian. Any military action would likely result in the destruction of our forces and possibly retaliation against Earth. General Yoon spoke first. He was a large man with scars from the border wars, when humanity had fought off pirate raiders in the outer systems. Ma'am, I understand the emotional appeal of helping the Velani, But we have to think strategically. Humanity has been part of galactic civilization for less than 50 years. We're still building our strength, our alliances, our technology base. If we throw away our fleet on a hopeless gesture, Earth becomes defenseless. Director Kong nodded agreement. My sources in Scarith space confirm that they view any interference as an act of war. They don't negotiate, they don't show mercy, and they don't stop until their enemies are completely destroyed. If we help the Vellani, the Scarith will come for us next. Dr. Han Su-Young had been quiet, but now she spoke up. I worked with the Vellani medical teams during the Proxima Plague, she said softly. They worked 18-hour days for 3 months, using their own life energy to power the healing crystals. 63 Vellani healers died from exhaustion, saving human lives. They never asked for payment, never demanded favors, never even asked us to remember their names. The room fell silent. Everyone remembered the plague, a bioweapon left behind by raiders that had nearly wiped out the Proxima colony. Conventional. Medicine had been useless. Only Vellani healing techniques had stopped the spread. I know the political realities, Dr. Han continued. I know the tactical situation. But I also know that if we let the Vellani die without even trying to help, we lose something important about who we are as a species. President Choi rubbed her temples. What about our secret projects? Do we have anything that could level the playing field? Engineer specialist Bei Hyun-woo spoke from his seat at the back of the room. He was young for his position, but brilliant in the way that made older officers nervous. Project Defiance has been testing modified ship designs based on captured Scarith technology. We've been able to reverse engineer some of their weapons and defensive systems. Our ships are still smaller and less powerful, but they're faster and more maneuverable than standard Scarith vessels. How much faster? Admiral Woojin asked. 30% increase in sublight speed, 50% improvement in jump accuracy. Bei replied. Plus, we've developed new tactical software that can predict Scarith attack patterns based on their previous campaigns. They're very methodical. They follow the same strategies that have worked for 1,000 years. General Yoon leaned forward. And our forces? Every ship in the fleet has been upgraded over the past 2 years, Bei said. We've been preparing for the possibility of Scarith aggression for a while. The modifications haven't been tested in real combat, but the simulations are promising. President Choi looked around the room. Let me be clear about what we're discussing. If we send our fleet to Viridian, we're betting the future of humanity on an untested technology and the hope that we can defeat an enemy that has never lost. A battle. If we fail, Earth becomes defenseless, and the Scarith will likely add us to their list of targets. Yes, ma'am, Admiral Woojin said quietly. And if we don't go, an entire civilization dies, including the people who saved hundreds of thousands of human lives. Also, yes, ma'am. The president was quiet for a long moment, staring at the tactical displays that showed Scarith forces massing around Viridian. Finally, she spoke. Dr. Han, you said we lose something important if we don't help. What do we lose? Dr. Han looked up, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. We lose the right to call ourselves human, Mime. Humans help people. It's what we do. It's what makes us different from the machines we fight and the empires that care only about power. If we become the kind of species that calculates the worth of other people's lives, then maybe we deserve to be extinct. The room was silent except for the hum of electronics and the distant vibration of Luna Base's gravity generators. President Choi looked at each person in turn, weighing their arguments, their fears, their hopes. Admiral Woojin, she said finally, how long would it take to get our entire fleet to Viridian? 18 hours for the fastest ships, 24 for the full fleet, he replied. And our chances of success? Unknown, ma'am. We've never fought. a Scarith in a major engagement. But Engineer Bay is right. They rely on overwhelming force and predictable tactics. If we can surprise them and maintain tactical flexibility, we might have a chance. President Choi stood up, and everyone in the room stood with her. Gentlemen, ladies, I'm about to make a decision that will either save humanity's soul or get us all killed. Possibly both. She activated the communication system that connected her to every human settlement in space. This is President Choi Minji speaking to all citizens of the Terran Republic. 18 hours ago, the Galactic Council abandoned the Vailani people to genocide at the hands of the Scarith Horde. Every major power in the galaxy has decided that helping them is too dangerous, too costly, too risky. She paused, letting the words sink in across a dozen worlds. The Vailani are peaceful healers who have never hurt anyone. They saved hundreds of thousands of human lives during the Proxima Plague. They are our friends, and they are going to die. Unless someone helps them. Another pause. I have decided that someone will be us. The entire Terran Defense Force is deploying to Viridian to stand with the Vailani against the Scarith Horde. We may not win. We may all die trying. But we will not abandon our friends to genocide. That is not who we are. The communication ended, and President Choi turned to Admiral Wujin. Get our people ready, Admiral. We have a war to fight. As the meeting broke up and officers rushed to prepare for deployment, Dr. Han stopped Admiral Wujin in the corridor. Admiral, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you really think we can win? Wujin looked at her for a long moment. I think we can try. And sometimes, trying is enough. 24 hours later, every human ship in space was racing toward Viridian, carrying with them the hopes of a species that had decided that some things were worth dying for. They didn't know if they could save the Vailani, but they knew they had to try, because that was what humans did. Admiral Kim Woo-jin stood on the bridge of the Inshan's Fury and stared at the most terrifying sight he had ever seen. The view screen showed the Viridian system, where 50,000 Scarith ships floated in perfect formation around the dying. Crystal world. Each ship was a nightmare of metal and flesh, bristling with weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. Dear God, whispered Captain Lee Tiemann, who had transferred to the flagship as liaison officer. There are so many of them. The human fleet looked pitiful in comparison. 300 ships, most of them smaller than a single Scarith destroyer. The crew members around the bridge were trying to hide their fear, but Wujin could see it in their eyes. They all knew the numbers. They all understood what they were flying into. Sir, reported Lieutenant Park Jisu from the communications. Station. The Scarith War Prime is requesting to speak with you. Wujun straightened his uniform and tried to look like a man who wasn't about to lead his entire species to extinction. Put him through. The view screen filled with the image of Destructor Zaydak, the Scarith War Prime. He had once been some kind of humanoid creature, but the Scarith conversion process had turned him into something from a nightmare. Half of his face was still organic flesh, pale and scarred. The other half was mechanical, with a red optical sensor that glowed like a burning coal. Cables and tubes connected his brain to external processors, and his voice came through speakers embedded in his throat. Primitive mammals, Zadok said, his voice a mixture of organic vocal cords and electronic distortion. You interfere in the harvest of Viridian. This is unexpected. We have reviewed your species' military capabilities. You pose no threat to the Horde. Admiral Wujin forced himself to smile. War Prime Zedok. I am Admiral Kim Wujin of the Terran Republic. We're here to protect our friends, the Vailani people. I suggest you withdraw your forces and find somewhere else to play with your toys. Zedok's organic eye narrowed while his mechanical sensor focused on Wujin's face. Curious. You show aggression, despite being vastly outnumbered. Perhaps there is useful material in human brains after all. Very well. Withdraw now, and we will harvest your world quickly when we are finished here. Refuse, and we will make your conversion process ... educational. The only thing being harvested today is your scrap metal, Wujin replied. All ships, this is Admiral Wujin. Engage the enemy. Show them what humans can do. The space around Viridian exploded into chaos. Commander Song Yunwu led the stealth frigate wing in the opening attack. Her ships were tiny compared to the Scarith vessels, but they had been modified with new technology that made them nearly invisible to enemy sensors. Ghost Squadron, follow my lead, she called over the radio. Hit and run, just like we practiced. Make them chase us into the asteroid field. The frigates darted between the massive Scarith ships like minnows swimming around sharks. Their weapons were small, but they were precise. Song targeted the sensor arrays and communication relays, trying to blind and confuse the enemy rather than destroy them outright. It's working, called Lieutenant Kim Minho from the frigate Soul's Ghost. Their targeting systems can't lock onto us. They're firing blind. But the Scarith had numbers on their side. Even firing blind, some of their shots found targets. The frigate Bison's Shadow took a direct hit and exploded in a ball of flame and metal. 12 good people died in an instant. Captain Ru Do-yun commanded the carrier Bison's Shield, and he was having his own problems. The Scarith fighter craft were fast and heavily armed, designed to swarm enemy ships like angry wasps. But Do-yun had studied Earth's naval history, and he knew something about dealing with swarm attacks. All fighter squadrons deploy in Delta formation, he ordered. Don't try to fight them ship to ship. Use chaos patterns. Make them unable to predict where you'll be next. The human pilots were good, but they were outnumbered 10-1. Lieutenant An Ji-hu found himself surrounded by Scarith fighters, their weapons tearing pieces off his ship's hull. I can't shake them, he called desperately. They're too fast. Hold on, Ji-hu, came the voice of his squadron leader, Captain Yu Sora. I'm coming in from above. She dove her fighter into the middle of the enemy formation, firing in all directions and drawing their attention away from the damaged craft. It was a suicide move, and everyone knew it. But it gave Ji-hu time to escape. Yu, Sora's fighter exploded. Moments later, taking 3 Scarith ships with her. On the surface of Viridian, the battle was even more desperate. Lieutenant Colonel Nam Hai-jin was trying to coordinate the defense of the Vellani orbital stations, while Scarith ground forces poured onto the crystal world below. The stations had been built for peace, not war, but the humans were doing their best to turn them into weapons. Engineering Team 3, I need more power to the defensive batteries, she called over the radio. Engineering Team 5, can you get that sensor array back online? Engineer Specialist Bei Hyun-woo was crawling through the maintenance shafts of Harmony Station, trying to jury-rig captured Scarith weapons into the station systems. The work was dangerous. One mistake and the alien technology would explode, taking half the station with it. But they needed every advantage they could get. Colonel, I've got good news and bad news, he reported. The good news is I can give you Scarith-level firepower. The bad news is the power drain will probably overload our generators after about 10 minutes. 10 minutes is better than 10 seconds, Nam replied. Do it. The modified weapons came online just as a wave of Scarith assault ships approached the station. The alien attackers were expecting to face defensive systems designed for peaceful crystal beings. Instead, they ran into weapons that could punch through their armor like paper. But there were always more of them. Back in space, Admiral Wu Jin was fighting the battle of his life. From the bridge of the Inchen's Fury, the massive dreadnought was the pride of the human fleet. But even she was tiny compared to the Scarith command ships. Her weapons could hurt the enemy, but not fast enough to make a real difference. Sir, we've lost contact with the Soul's Pride and the Dagu's Hammer, reported the tactical officer. The Guangzhou's Hope is requesting permission to withdraw. They've taken heavy damage. Wu Jin looked at the tactical display and felt his heart sink. They had been fighting for 8 hours, and the human fleet was being torn apart. They had destroyed maybe 100 Scarith ships, but there were still thousands more. At this rate, the human fleet would be completely destroyed within the next few hours. Sir, Captain Tiemann said quietly, maybe we should consider a tactical withdrawal. We've done what we could. Wu Jin was about to agree when Dr. Han Suyang's voice came over the radio from the science vessel Pastor's Dream. Admiral, I've been analyzing the Scarith biosignatures. I think I've found something important. Talk to me, Doctor. The Scarith conversion process involves integrating organic nervous systems with mechanical components at the quantum level. But the Vallani healing crystals generate quantum frequencies that interfere with that integration. If we could amplify the Vallani's natural healing abilities, Wu Jin felt a spark of hope. What would we need? The largest crystal formation on Viridian. It's in the Sacred Grove, about 50 kilometers from the main Villani city. If we could get a team down there and help the Vallani focus their power through that crystal, the quantum interference would disrupt the Scarith conversion process, Wu Jin finished. It might actually turn them back into whatever they were before. It's possible, sir, but someone would have to reach the surface and hold the position long enough for the Vallani to work their magic. Wu Jin looked at the tactical display again. Most of the human ships were damaged or destroyed. The Scarith were closing in for the final assault. But maybe, just maybe, they could buy enough time for one last desperate plan. Captain Tiemann, he said, how do you feel about a trip to the surface? Tiemann smiled, and it was the grim smile of a man who had nothing left to lose. I thought you'd never ask, sir. Within minutes, a landing force was assembling in the shuttle bay. Captain Tiemann would lead the mission, along with Sergeant Ko Minseok for explosives work, Dr. Shin Yunji for technical support, and Pilot Lee Sungmin for air cover. It wasn't much of an army, but it was what they had dot as the shuttle launched. Toward the crystal world below, Admiral Wu Jin turned back to the space battle. The Scarith were closing in, sensing victory. But they didn't know about human stubbornness yet. All ships, this is Admiral Wu Jin, he called over the fleet radio. We've got one shot at this. Cover the landing team and buy them time to reach the crystal formation. I don't care if we have to ram the enemy ships. No one gets through to the surface. The remaining human ships formed a protective shell around the planet, preparing for the final phase of a battle that would determine the fate of two civilizations. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time, but they were still fighting. And sometimes that was enough. The shuttle raced through Viridian's atmosphere while Scarith fighters chased it like metal vultures. Pilot Lee Sungmin threw the craft into a steep dive, weaving between the crystal spires that rose from the planet's surface like frozen music. Behind them, energy blasts turned ancient Villani monuments into clouds of glittering dust. Hold on back there, Sungmin called to his passengers. This is going to get rough. Captain Lee Tiemann gripped his restraints as the shuttle spun wildly to avoid another barrage of enemy fire. Through the viewport, he could see the Sacred Grove in the distance, a forest of massive crystals that grew from the planet's core like transparent trees. Each crystal was the size of a skyscraper, and they hummed with the accumulated life energy of thousands of years. Sergeant Ko Minseok was checking his explosives for the third time. He was a big man with gentle eyes, the kind of person who could blow up a building and then apologize to the rubble afterward. Captain, I've got enough charges to clear a path to the main crystal, but we're going to have company. My sensors show at least 500 Scarith ground troops between us and the target. Dr. Shin Yoonji looked up from her equipment scanner. She was the smartest person Tiemann had ever met, capable of understanding alien technology just by looking at it. The quantum readings are off the charts, she reported. If the Velani can focus their healing energy through the Master Crystal, the interference pattern should affect every Scarith ship in the system. But the crystal needs to be calibrated perfectly, or the energy will just dissipate harmlessly. The shuttle shuddered as another enemy blast caught their rear shields. Sung Min cursed and pushed the engines harder. We're losing altitude fast. I can get you close to the grove, but the landing is going to be hard. Tiemann activated his radio and tried to contact the Velani on the surface. Crystal Elder Luminara, this is Captain Tiemann. We're coming to help you activate the Master Crystal. Are you ready? The response came through in the form of harmonic vibrations that the translation system converted into words. Captain Tiemann, you should not have come. The Scarith have surrounded the sacred grove. My people are trapped in the crystal caves beneath the surface. We cannot reach the Master Crystal. Don't worry about that, Tiemann replied. We're experts at getting into places where we don't belong. The shuttle hit the ground hard, skidding across a field of smaller crystals that chimed like bells as they shattered. Through the smoke and sparks, Tiemann could see Scarith warriors converging on their position. They moved like spiders made of metal and hate, their weapons already charging for another assault. Move, move, move. Min Seok shouted, kicking open the shuttle's rear hatch. He laid down covering fire with his heavy rifle while the others grabbed their equipment and ran for the tree line. The sacred grove was beautiful and terrible at the same time. The crystal trees rose hundreds of meters into the air, their surfaces reflecting and amplifying light until the entire forest glowed like a captured star. But between the crystals, Scarith warriors were setting up weapon emplacements and patrol routes. They had turned the most sacred place on Viridian into a military fortress. Dr. Shin crouched behind a fallen crystal log and scanned the enemy positions with her equipment. I count 200 hostiles between us and the Master Crystal, she whispered, plus automated defenses and at least 3 heavy weapon platforms. Sung Min reloaded his sidearm and grinned. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds almost fair. Min Seok was already unpacking his explosives. Give me 10 minutes to set charges on their weapon platforms. When I blow them, you run for the crystal. I'll cover your retreat. Tiemann looked at the sergeant's face and knew what the man was really saying. There wouldn't be any retreat. This was a one-way mission for all of them. Min Seok, he said quietly, it's been an honor serving with you. The big man smiled. Save the speeches for after we win, Captain. I've got work to do. While Min Seok crept toward the enemy positions with his explosives, Tiemann used his radio to coordinate with the space battle above. The news wasn't good. Captain, this is Admiral Wujin. We're down to 60 ships and falling fast. The Scarith are preparing for a final assault. How long do you need? 20 minutes minimum, Tiemann replied. Dr. Shin needs time to calibrate the crystal, and the Velani need time to build up enough energy for the quantum pulse. There was a long pause before Wujin's voice came back, tired but determined. We'll give you the time, Captain. Somehow. The first explosions lit up the grove like deadly fireworks. Min Seok's charges destroyed 2 weapon platforms and scattered a squad of Scarith warriors, but the enemy responded quickly. Energy blasts turned crystal trees into clouds of sparkling fragments, and the beautiful harmonic music of the grove became a discordant scream of destruction. Now, Tiemann shouted, and the 3 survivors ran toward the Master Crystal dot. It was the most beautiful thing any of them had ever seen. The crystal rose from the heart of the grove, like a transparent mountain, its faceted surfaces catching and reflecting light from every angle. Inside its depths, patterns of energy swirled like captured galaxies. Powered by the life force of the planet itself, Dr. Shin immediately began setting up her equipment, connecting human technology to alien crystal with cables and wireless transmitters. The quantum resonance is incredible, she breathed. It's like the entire planet is one giant healing organism. Sungmin had found a defensive position behind a smaller crystal formation and was trading shots with advancing Scarith warriors. Whatever you're going to do it fast. They're coming from all directions. Teeman activated his radio to contact the Vellani refugees hiding in the caves below. Crystal Elder Luminara, we're at the Master Crystal. Dr. Shin is setting up the quantum amplifier. We need your people to focus their healing energy through the crystal network. We understand, Captain Teeman, came the musical reply. But the energy required will drain our life force. Many of my people will not survive the process. Teeman felt his heart clench. The Vellani were willing to sacrifice themselves to save the galaxy from the Scarith horde. Elder, we can't ask you to. You are not asking, Captain. We are choosing. The Scarith have already taken so much from us. They will not take our choice to help others. From deep beneath the grove, a harmonic vibration began to build. It started as a whisper, barely audible above the sounds of battle. But it grew stronger, more complex, as hundreds of Vellani voices joined together in a song of sacrifice and hope. The Master Crystal began to glow. Dr. Shin worked frantically to calibrate her equipment as energy patterns danced through the crystals. Core, the quantum field is building, she called over the growing harmonic resonance. But I need more time to tune the frequency properly. If I get this wrong, the energy will feed back into the planet's core and crack Viridian like an egg. A Scarith warrior peered behind her, weapon raised to fire. Sungmin's shot caught the creature in the chest, but more were coming. Too many more. I can't hold them much longer, he shouted, ducking behind cover as energy blasts scorched the crystal around him. That was when Minseok appeared, carrying enough explosives to level the city block. His uniform was torn and bloodied, but his eyes were calm. Time for the big finale, he said, activating the timer on his remaining charges. You've got 5 minutes to finish the calibration and get clear. Teeman stared at him. Minseok, there's nowhere to run. If you detonate those charges, we're all dead. The sergeant smiled and patted Teeman on the shoulder. That's the idea, Captain. Someone has to make sure the Scarith don't interrupt Dr. Shin's work. Besides, I always wanted to go out with a bang. He ran toward the advancing enemy forces, drawing their fire and leading them away from the Master Crystal. The last thing they heard from him was laughter echoing through the grove as he charged into impossible odds. The explosion, when it came, shook the entire planet. Dr. Shin used the chaos to complete her calibration, her fingers flying over the controls as the quantum field reached critical resonance. It's working, she shouted. The healing frequency is propagating through the crystal network. Every Scarith ship in the system should be affected, but the effort cost her everything. The quantum feedback surge overloaded her nervous system, and she collapsed beside her equipment, her last words a whisper. Tell my mother I helped save the galaxy. Teeman and Sungmin were alone now, surrounded by the crystal matrix that was broadcasting the Vellani's healing song across space. Through his radio, he could hear Admiral Wujin's amazed voice. Captain, something incredible is happening up here. The Scarith ships are shutting down. Their crews are changing back. On his personal communicator, Or Prime Zadok's voice came through, but it was different now. The mechanical distortion was fading, replaced by the sound of someone remembering what it was like to be alive. The harvest ... ends, the former War Prime whispered, his organic voice full of wonder and horror. We remember. We remember who we were before the machines took us. The Scarith Horde dies today, and we are free. Teeman looked up at the stars through the crystal canopy above and smiled. They had done it. Somehow, impossibly, they had actually done it, but the price had been everything. 1 year later, Admiral Lee Timon stood on the observation deck of the Liberation's Dawn and watched the most incredible sight in galactic history. Before him, representatives from 127 worlds gathered in the space around Viridian for the dedication of the memorial that would honor all those lost to the Scarith Horde. The memorial itself was a wonder to behold. Veilani crystal singers had grown it from the master crystal in the sacred grove, shaping it into a complex geometric form that caught and reflected light from every star in the system. Inside its transparent depths, the names of every victim of the Scarith Horde glowed with soft inner light. 47 civilizations, billions of beings, all remembered in crystal and song. Taman had been promoted after the battle, though he sometimes felt he didn't deserve it. The real heroes were the ones who hadn't come home. Sergeant Komen Siok, Dr. Shin Yunji, Captain Yu Sora, and so many others. They had died to prove that some things were worth any sacrifice. Admiral, came a musical voice behind him. He turned to see Crystal Elder Luminara approaching, her crystalline form now bright and healthy. The Veilani had recovered from their ordeal, but they would never forget who had stood with them when the rest of the galaxy turned away. Elder Luminara, Teeman said, bowing slightly in the Veilani fashion. The memorial is beautiful. Your people have created something that will inspire hope for generations. It was not just our people, Admiral, she replied, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Human engineers designed the structural framework. Kethran workers provided the materials. Even the Zephyrians contributed energy patterns for the lighting system. This memorial represents what we can accomplish when we work together. The Kethrans were the former Scarith, freed from their mechanical slavery by the quantum pulse that had swept through their fleet. Their leader, bioengineer Kethver, who had once been the terrible War Prime Zethok, had become one of humanity's strongest allies. The conversion process that had turned him into a monster had been reversed, revealing the gentle scientist he had been before his people were enslaved. The Liberation Alliance grows stronger every day, Teeman observed, watching the ships of dozens of species maneuver in perfect formation around the memorial. 200 worlds now, all united by the idea that no one should face extinction alone. It hadn't been easy. The major galactic powers who had abandoned the Veilani were now isolated and bitter, forming their own defensive alliances to counter humanity's growing influence. The Zephyrian Empire, the Terracon Collective, and the Aquari Federation had all tried to claim credit for the liberation of the Scarith victims, but everyone knew the truth. When genocide came knocking, only humanity had answered the door. Admiral Teeman to the bridge, came the voice of his communications officer over the ship's intercom. President Choi is ready to begin the dedication ceremony. Teeman made his way to the bridge of the Liberation's Dawn, a massive ship that represented the combined technologies of 3 species. Veilani healing crystals were integrated into the hull to protect the crew from radiation and injury. Kethran manufacturing techniques had made the ship larger and stronger than any previous human vessel, and human ingenuity had tied it all together into something new and wonderful. On the main view screen, President Choi Minji appeared from Earth. She looked older than her years, worn down by the burdens of leading humanity through its transformation. From a minor galactic power to the moral center of civilized space. But her voice was strong as she addressed the assembled fleet. Friends, allies, fellow children of the stars, she began. We gather today to remember those who were lost to darkness and to celebrate those who chose light over shadow. 1 year ago, The galaxy watched as an entire civilization faced extinction. Most turned away. Some found excuses. Others claimed it was none of their business. The camera angle shifted to show the memorial crystal, now glowing with the combined light of thousands of ships from hundreds of worlds. But humanity looked at the dying Vellani and said, "Not on our time. We chose to stand with the helpless against the powerful. We chose to risk everything for people we barely knew. And in making that choice, we discovered something important about ourselves." Tiemann thought about the crew around him. Commander Crystal Song Harmony, a Vellani warrior poet who had become. His first officer hummed a soft melody of remembrance. Strategic Prime Kethvar, his tactical advisor, worked quietly at his console, using his knowledge of former Scarith technology to protect the Alliance from new threats. They were no longer human and alien. They were just friends working together toward a common goal. "We learned that strength isn't measured in ships or weapons," President Choi continued. "It's measured in the willingness to do what's right, even when it's difficult, even when it's dangerous, even when everyone tells you it's impossible." In the engineering sections of the ship, Chief Engineer Bae Hyun-woo was working with Dr. Han Su-yang to perfect the jump gate technology that could evacuate entire civilizations in a matter of hours. They had learned from the Vellani crisis that prevention was better than cure. The Alliance now maintained rapid response fleets that could be anywhere in the galaxy within days. "Today, we dedicate this memorial not just to those we lost, but to those we saved," the President said. The Kethrans, freed from mechanical slavery. The Harmony Collective, liberated from Scarith processing centers. The Singing Trees of Melodia, Prime, rescued from conversion farms. 127 worlds that know freedom because someone chose to fight for them. Cultural specialist O.G. Wan, now Director of Interspecies Relations, had helped establish schools on dozens of worlds where children of different species learned together. The sight of young Vellani, humans and Kethrons playing in mixed groups was becoming common throughout Alliance space. A generation was growing up that would never understand the old prejudices and fears. "But our work is not finished," President Choi said, her voice growing stronger. "There are still worlds under threat, still people who need help, still darkness that must be met with light. The Alliance will continue to grow, continue to spread the message that no one faces the night alone." As the ceremony continued, Tiemann reflected on how much had changed. The Soul's Pride, the ship that had started it all, was now a museum in Earth orbit, visited by millions of beings who wanted to see where the liberation began. Captain Lee Tiemann, a man who had defied orders to stand with the Vellani, had become a symbol of moral courage throughout the galaxy. But the real changes were smaller and more personal. In the crew quarters of Alliance ships, humans shared meals with crystal beings and reformed cyborgs. In the science labs, researchers from dozens of species worked together to solve problems that had puzzled their individual civilizations for centuries. In the command centers, tactical officers who had once been enemies now planned joint operations to protect the innocent. The memorial ceremony reached its climax as representatives from every Alliance world placed crystal fragments into the central memorial. Each fragment contained the genetic patterns and cultural memories of species that had been lost to the Scarith horde, preserved forever in living crystal. Tiemann placed his own fragment, a piece of the master crystal from Viridian's sacred grove, into the memorial structure. As it made contact, the entire memorial pulsed with light, and for a moment, every being in the system could hear the voices of the dead, singing a song of hope that echoed across the galaxy. "In their memory, we choose to remember," President Choi said as the ceremony concluded. "In their honor, we choose to fight. And in their name, we choose to ensure that never again will genocide go unanswered. This is our promise, our duty, and our gift to the future." As the assembled fleet began to disperse, each ship returning to its home world or its patrol duties. Teeman remained on the observation deck, watching the memorial crystal slowly rotate in space. Commander Harmony joined him, her crystalline form glowing softly in the starlight. "It's beautiful," she said in her musical voice, "but also sad. So many lost souls." "But not forgotten," Teeman replied. "And not in vain. Look around you, Harmony. Look at what their sacrifice built." She did look, and she saw ships from dozens of species working together, protecting trade routes and responding to distress calls. She saw the rapid response fleets that could reach any threatened world within hours. She saw the jump gates that could evacuate entire populations if necessary. She saw the schools and hospitals and research stations where the Alliance was building a better future for everyone. "You're right," she said finally. "They died fighting darkness, and from their deaths came light." Strategic Prime Kethver approached. Them, his biological and mechanical components, now perfectly integrated in a way that enhanced rather than enslaved him. "Admiral, we're receiving reports of Scarith remnants threatening the Outer Rim colonies. A liberation fleet is being assembled." Teeman nodded. There would always be another threat, another group of innocents who needed protection. But now they weren't alone. The galaxy had learned something important in the skies above Viridian, that when good people stood together, even the darkness could be beaten. "Prepare the Liberation's Dawn for departure," he ordered, "and send word to all Alliance fleets. Another world needs our help."